drama, comedy, stories, poetry. This is Right Radio.
Good afternoon, you're listening to Sheffield Live and it's Right Radio with me, Jane.
And me, Chad.
This is a very special episode of the show because it's the first time that me and Chad are doing the show without the assistance of our producer. So, we could do anything, Chad. We could have a party, we could get some beers in, we could throw equipment out the window. We're not going to do that, but we may mess about a little bit with the format. So, it's a little bit of a different format. We can do what we want. We're our own people.
Yes.
However, there may be more than normal number of technical glitches just because it's our first time. So, let's tell you what our new improvisational jazz-based show is going to be. So, that's the introduction. I'm doing that now. Then we're going to go straight to the interview. No story first time. We're going straight to the interview. We've got Hybropsyche with us, and he's going to be telling us about his new book. And we're going to have a live reading. That's right, live. Then we've got Echo by Paul Milton. And then we've got another interview, yes, in the first hour, with Anne Grange, who's going to be telling us about an exciting project that she's doing. And that's only the first hour. What will happen in the second hour, Chad? Craziness.
We'll improvise. We'll see what happens.
We
Something
don't
will.
fully know. So that's how improvisational it is. So let me introduce to you our first guest. It's Hybropsyche, friend of the show. He's been with us before, but this time he has got a book of children's stories out.
Hello.
Hello. Lovely to see you. Yes, I didn't give you enough time to say hello.
No.
Sorry, that was my fault.
Yeah. Oh.
So, a book of children's stories. Where has the idea from that come from?
I think because we're all big kids.
Yes.
Long and short of it, I wanted to. I've always had imagined things to be different than what they are. In the fact that everything I do every day, there's always something that I'll look at or whatever that'll spring forth an image of something, but like a universe moment. I'm not explaining myself very well, but for the kids aspect of it, it's I just wanted to have a go at this. I'd not done anything like this before, but I'd always just watched, lots of TV, lots of things from when I was little. There was certain times, say for example, there's a scene in one of these stories, the Japanese Destiny story, where there's a kind of an eternal corridor, and where they're being pursued by the grasping hands, etc. But I'd kind of got that influence from a computer game. There used to be back in the day, there was a computer game called the Light Corridor, and you used to go, "Welcome to the Light Corridor." And you had to sort of like move along this long corridor, and this ball would bounce towards you, you have to bounce it back. But I started imagining in my head that, we're always moving forward, and I started imagining, right, well, what if there was something coming after us? And so do you have to keep, and I started playing with this idea. So
did the idea come before the thought, could I make this for children?
Again, I'm sort of collecting ideas. I was collecting ideas that I've had for a lot of years. Just these little nuggets of thoughts. And I was trying to explain this to somebody before, and I'd had a few pints, and they were a bit easier, so I probably should have got some pints in now. But it's, as I said before, it's like when I look at something. Say, for example, I was walking through town, and there was this arch, and I just looked at this arch, and then from that sprang this whole moment of being behind that arch and in some kind of situation. I know it was early morning, I know there were other people there, but they were kind of Victorian people, and that's kind of I almost hear pictures, I think is and say for example if I were looking at a skylight, a glass skylight, or I'd probably imagine white noise, that type of thing. So a lot of the ideas for this I mean, there was another part. There's the on the front cover. You've got the one with the blue hair.
Lovely front cover. There's a lady with a blue hair and a blue dress.
Yeah.
And a lady with black hair and a lovely purple dress. I think my daughter would be attracted. And there's some fairy wings as well there.
Yeah, she's the one that features. Well, she actually features in the first and the last story. So she's Shantar. She's like the fairy queen, but. She also appears in the first story.
And it's three short stories, I should say.
Yeah, 3 short stories for kids aged 11 to whatever.
Similar characters or different?
There is an underlying theme. It's a bit like Babylon 5. It's sort of like there is a sort of an underlying.
Chad's too young to know what Babylon 5
I've seen
is.
Babylon 5.
Yeah, you probably watched about 3 episodes and thought, I can't handle this.
You've got to stay with it.
Yeah, you definitely have.
Get to the good stuff.
Well, I mean, I've had them. I've had all 5 seasons for years, and I've never got to end of season 5 yet. I've just had another go at it, but now I've gone back to Tudors and watching there instead. But anyway, yeah. So you got Shantar. She's the kind of fairy queen. Again, that was an idea I'd had years and years ago about a story I was going to do as a kid's story, and I never did anything with. The one with the blue hair, if I'm being honest, I was actually fell asleep listening to Lord of the Rings.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of got the influence for the hall with the 5 windows as well. Because what it happened in my dream, I'd gone up these stairs, and there was this sort of woman in a blue dress laying on a couch. Nothing, no rudery, but just.
It's for 11-year-olds.
Yeah, that's right. And she sort of sat up and started talking a load of, in a different language, and that sort of like. And I remember she had big eyes, and I thought, well, I'll put that in the story. But she's also flatulent.
Some of your work is somewhat dark. So has that been a challenge to you writing for children?
I was
being fair.
Yes, I suppose so. Yeah, because hopefully that what I'm trying to achieve with this is get a, a bit like sort of Wallace and Gromit. I wanted that sort of the idea of it being not just a kids thing, but the whole family could enjoy it. Like when you saw interviews about. Is it Nick Clark, his work? I might have got that name wrong, but when they were talking, there were people all over the world, and none of them were kids, talking about Wallace and Gromit, about the 3 shows that he did. So that's the kind of thing I wanted here, to be able to, there's enough in there for, obviously for kids, and, there'll be enough in there, hopefully, for adults to get into and relate to. So what I've kind of done is again, you've got the picture of that sort of mansion house. That's that belongs to the Isherwaites. So that's in the first story. So I'd had a go at trying to write almost a period story because it was set in the 20s. When obviously the gentry in our country were starting to realise that they couldn't afford these lavish lifestyles, and a lot of them were going, this was. Say, for example, a bit of an example is Sprotborough Hall in Doncaster, because I'm from Doncaster, because you've got Cusworth Hall, but opposite that you used to have a place called Sprotborough. That had a really grand hall, but that got demolished in 1926. Obviously, Cusworth Hall remained open as a museum, so I wanted that kind of not just. Basically, there's a character. Shantar does appear in that story, but not as herself. She has to be in disguise because she's basically there's somebody there who is serving penance from her realm, who's gone back in time to the 20s for what she did in the Jackby's Destiny story. So there's a bit of a paradox there. So. One part is as well where you get the Hall of the 5 Windows. That's when the Isherwaites finally move out of that house and have to downsize. That hall survives, and it basically becomes kind of like almost a crossover point to the labyrinth that Jackby goes into in the present day. So Jackby's a kind of shy lad who's what's the word? You realise that he realises that he starts to have more than just he's more than a daydreamer, that he starts to have these other sort of not magical thoughts, but as in his mind is attuned to the kind of what Shantar requires of him to attend when she takes him into the labyrinth. So if I were trying to summarise there, because I know I've jumped about a wee bit, the issue 8 is the obviously the first story set in the 20s, and there are characters from Jackby's Destinies in there, from Shantar's realm, but all of them are in disguise, apart from there's a certain tune that they hear on a cylinder player that they are powerless against, and they have to keep going into hiding so no one, because they begin to turn back into their normal appearance, and obviously they're trying to, a bit like a Star Trek Prime Directive, they're not wanting to be discovered. So that's that story. The second story is called The Wacky Flight, and I just, again, I was sat out one day, especially last year when we had about 6,000 barbecues because of the hot summer.
Yes.
And I was just sat out there having...
Adding to the climate change.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. And I was sitting there under gazebo, and I started thinking about a kid's story if somebody wanted to build a flying machine out of it. So I used the idea of, how can I say, a combination of brains and brawn, but also they didn't realise that Jackby was also an influence onto how it actually worked. It wouldn't. Basically, it's a contraption that wouldn't fly normally. They got everything scientifically as correct as they could do, but it was his influence as well. And obviously, he didn't realise at this point that he had this influence until the third story, which obviously becomes Jackby's Destiny. So, one of the characters in there, Jackby's Destiny, I've done some colourful characters again with that, because there's another scene where they go through a kind of a labyrinth where they go through this wall, this really narrow slanted corridor, and whatever they do, they keep coming back into the same place, but the corridor's different every time. And that's probably a memory from a funhouse ride that used to be at Morecambe when we were kids, called Noah's Ark, because that had one of those bits, and it was quite funny actually, because me and my sister won't go any further because it's got one of those compressed air tubes that squirt air at you really quickly, and she thought it was the leg of a giant spider, so she won't go any further, and I thought they were trying to gas us because they got like this rubber pipe, and another character in there is kind of a lovable rogue that you wouldn't turn your back on, but he would, and that's the elf-like, the goblin-like character called Soto.
Then you've also got the character, is it Davav?
Yeah, I'd say.
Great. That's great name.
It's basically, that was, if you kind of imagine Lord Percy and Black Adam, where he always had that handkerchief near to his nose, and the best way to describe that character is just Ponzi, and he's just sort of, that's it, it's like, he's always got this handkerchief like that, and he's just almost nervous twitch type of like a repressed kind of, but sort of almost dressing like the Prince Regent, but and that kind of. It's Devar Babu. That's how he pronounced himself. But I think we settle in the story later. We're just calling him Devar. Yeah,
well, that's a really great name. Let's go back to something you were saying about something you were saying about Jackby.
Yeah,
saying that it's sort of a young lad who's feels out of place in society. I remember that connects to some of the themes in your other books.
Yeah, it does.
That whole young individual sort of wanting to be non-conformist and that imagination, and that's also a theme you get in a lot of sort of YA stuff. So I'm wondering, did that theme that you've worked on before, did that help with the going from writing your normal novels to writing something for children?
In some ways, yeah, because I'm always thinking, and I at least recently did a Myers-Briggs test, and these results, they have these questionnaires, and it asks you, what would you do in this situation? You like strongly agree, that type of thing, and you get a 4-letter code at the end of it, which determines what kind of person you are. And I became a INTJ, which basically the I stands for introvert, that was 31%. The N is innovative, that was 6%, and T and J, thinking, as is the T, that was 19%, and J is judging. So, I mean, it's definitely, I'm definitely an introvert kind of person. I do prefer my own company, and it was obviously saying on this website that what famous people have got that one, and I was quite pleased to learn that Emily Bronte was also there, and it was because when I wrote the one, if I just go back to the Steely Amelia book, when I wrote that, I wanted to imagine, I tried to imagine someone like Emily Bronte living in our surveillance culture, and again, that's why she was more of an individual. But Emily's poems, one of them, there's one line that says, or two lines that says, I'll walk where my own nature would be leading. It vexes me to choose another guide. And I just love that line. Yeah. And then there's another one, there's the poem called To Imagination, and just a little quote from that is where she says, so hopeless is the world without, the world within I doubly prize, thy world where guile and hate and doubt and cold suspicions never rise, where thou and I and liberty have undisputed sovereignty. And I could just proper relate to that. I've studied up on the Brontes, and I thought Emily, probably not as a person, but certainly for the work that she did, or the poems that she did, that I could really relate to. Obviously, she was just happy at home and hearth when she had to go away and teach. It literally drove her mad. It made her ill. But there's less understanding about things like that in those days, obviously.
Sometimes cited as the first description of ADHD in females. I read yesterday, so she's certainly a very interesting character.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, another one as well was that apparently there's Arnold Schwarzenegger as well. Yeah, you can see that though, can't you?
I think that's probably more obvious.
Is it?
Yeah, I think that's what people think of rather than Emily Bronte.
Yeah. Oh, I got Gandalf as well. Apparently, fictional character Gandalf. He's an INTJ.
Oh yeah.
And Chevy Chase. Who else? Ensign Rowe from Star Trek: Next Generation. If you did remember that, but anyway, not many people would remember that. So so it was very much the. I'm like I say, I'm always thinking, so I don't just look at an object and see an object. I start something will start triggering a chain of thoughts, and that's. So music does a similar sort of thing. It's it does have its bad side, that, because you can be halfway through a day and suddenly think of a scene, and then you'll end up going to a pub. You know what I mean? You'll think of a scene that you've had before.
Do you write in the pub?
No.
Are you one to sort of just note something down?
No, not really. Mentally, I would do mentally. Yeah, I do that anyway, to be honest. But yeah, that's when I did Steely Amelia, I made a sort of hard rule to myself that I would not touch a drop while I was writing. I didn't want to be a Bramwell Bronte, because I
didn't do a Bramwell Bronte. No.
Yeah.
Some people really swear by a drink.
I did write. Well, I have. There's a book I never published that I wrote in about 1999, and maybe one day I'll get back to it and get it published. But there's a lot of it just makes me cringe.
Really?
It's too close to home. But yeah, I mean, definitely I will put it away while I'm writing that. So it does in a way get your creative juices going. But yeah, I think I just wanted to do. So I want to do this myself. I don't want, It's like when people write songs because they're influenced by drugs. I think that's cheating.
It's just tapping into the greater consciousness.
Well, they should do it this ends. No, you search for your own greater consciousness, don't you? Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Oh no, it's good. But I suppose we've got a question that's we've sort of covered, but anything more concrete that you found in the experience of writing for children? Did you read any children's books or anything to help you, or did you just go into it and think?
I just went into it. I mean, I think that what I was conscious of is not trying to have too many big words, unless the big words are funny.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. So I didn't want to be. I mean, I suppose my writing style, even when I was doing such as neural rehab with a futuristic one, I tried to sort of combine a modern style of writing with almost a Victorian one, rather than just he felt bad, he felt good type of thing, but putting a bit more flair into it, but not doing completely Victorian, where you had like 3 pages describing a fireplace or whatever. But
Did you trial it on any children, by the way?
Do I what, sorry?
Did you sort of show drafts to any children?
No. To be honest, we're not... I've given copies away, but I didn't do a sort of drafts. I did have a friend who's reviewed all my stuff, so I just I got his point of view. He's not a kid, but he's as old as I am. But
has he got any children?
No, neither have I. I prefer a harpsichord.
That's a good choice.
Yes, well, good writing.
We do babysit a lot recently, but he's not quite at the age of being read stuff like this.
Well, speaking of being read stuff like this, I think shall we hear an extract? You've given me a bit of from Jack B's Destiny, a story snippet. Shall we give the listeners a good taste of your work? So. This will be read live by me. I'll do any voices that are necessary, and you can sit back and enjoy. So this is Jack B's Destiny. Jack B and his companions now appeared to be at the landing of a very stately hall. Stairs seemed to go up and down, but all was well lit with chandeliers, the walls and banisters all clad in glossy white painted wood and embossed with ridged strips in set diamond patterns. But amidst all the red carpeted stairs and corridors, no windows were apparent. Well, I think I should have bought that suit I had for my uncle's wedding, Jack B mused. Spenlish laughed. I don't think any of us would look the part in such a place if it were in your world. Then, from below, there came the sound of footsteps, running as if in a panic, up the stairs to their location. This was accompanied by sounds of frustrated whimpering and constant tutting. Before them now stood a strange character, dressed in what Jack B recognised as old-fashioned clothes, a large blonde white wig, and constantly toting his handkerchief to his nose and mouth as he continued to fidget and tut. I came to greet you from the main reception. Why, oh why did you make me walk all the way up here and flourish my garments quite out of kilter? The being spoke with a light but nervous tone. Oh, push yourself together, you fluttering being, Spenlish snapped. Introduce yourself to the boy, and no more nonsense. The man drew in a few short breaths to calm himself, then bowed to Jack B. Handkerchief still at his face. Delectable to meet you. A series of tuts. I am... He seemed to take such delight in stating his name in such over-the-top grace that Jack B felt a wicked streak. I'm sorry, could you repeat your name? Devar-var-baboo. The being presented his name in exactly the same way. One more time. Devar-var-baboo. Can I just call you Dave? I see no reason to stand here and be insulted, he said again, in an even more frantic tone. Spenlish chuckled. That is a naughty young Jackby. Perhaps we could all make it easy for if we called you Devar. After all, in the land of humans, they usually call each other by their first name only in conversation. Devar smiled delicately down his nose. That will suffice. He stood for a few moments, as if lost in daydreams, then suddenly snapped out of it with a start. Oh! Spenlish leapt a metre in the air. Oh, Draggles, you started me. Further tuts began as he looked shocked. Such coarse language. But shall we begin? Devar held both his hands out to the front, and a gleaming slim square box appeared in them. He opened it to reveal dozens of small glass-like cubes, each with a different coloured shape set within. Are these square marbles? Jack B asked. Devar chuckled in a more relaxed tone. This is our currency. You must move through the various doors to reach the second window. Each door will require a toll in the correct value of Fritz in order that you can proceed further. Take as much and as varied as you can along with you. Jack B now looked in wonder at the glittering treasure held before him, and shyly put out a hand to take some. The man proffered the box higher. Pray, take as much as you can. Jack B thought aloud. Spenlish, can you create something to carry these in? She smiled, and a bag with a long strap now hung over his shoulder. He opened a pouch and once again looked at the contents of the box. I don't suppose you could tell me what each one is worth? Spenlish shook her head. I've never seen such things before. These came from your thoughts. He looked at them again, then at Devar. Can you even give me a clue? The eccentric being put his handkerchief to his brow, tutted some more, and finally said, It is forbidden to me to utter. Jack B sighed, and chose to take them from random selection, any that seemed different from the latter. Closing the bag at his side, he said to Devar, who still proffered the box, "I think I have enough now, thank you. You may take more if you desire, for I wouldn't want to steal all your money. Most kind indeed. What pray am I to do with it? Keep the change, as we say where I come from." The bizarre being leapt a metre into the air and bounded quite out of control. "All this for me? Zippets! 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 Pavement!" His jumps led to his blonde wig falling to the floor, revealing purple and orange hair, which flew out in spikes and quivered as he danced. "Enough nonsense!" Spenlish snapped. Devar stopped squeaking, picked up his wig and set it neatly back on his head once more, stuffing his natural hair out of sight. "Your pardon. This way. I can lead you to the first door of this house, and then your skill will determine how you fare from there." They began to walk down a long, straight flight of stairs, which was well lit with candles, triangle patterns on the wall to the left, and pearl set in the white banister to the right. Jackby looked over the side to see the great hall and a great dark circle set in the tiles of the floor. Now they appeared to be in a dark castle-like room, with grey stone and many flaming torches set at different levels of the walls and near the roof, but still no window has to be seen. Suddenly, a strange goblin-like creature glided away into a tunnel, singing in a soft tone. But more importantly, the arched alcove it had moved away from housed another jewel. Jackby gasped, "Spenlish, can you fly me up there?" Immediately she lifted him to be on a level with where the jewel was within reach, and he had just reached his hand out to grab it when the creature came rushing back with its arms flapping and making a harsh growl. Jackby kicked instinctively out, striking the creature, making it fall to the ground below with whimpering sounds. Jackby took the jewel, and Spenlish flew him back to the ground. "Now that brings a new term to the flying kick. Now we have two jewels, only two to go." But when he went to set the new jewel into his inside pocket, the other was gone. He gasped, "Did anyone see where the other one went? It's not here." Spenlish sighed. "It must have been an illusion. When the Wooker was destroyed, the illusion of the gem was vanished also." Jackby sighed. "So how do we tell if this one is real?" He looked at the new creature, getting itself up off the ground. "If we destroy this illusion and the jewel doesn't disappear, then..." Spenlish interrupted. "This silly little creature is not an illusion. I've seen his kind before." The thing snapped in a nasal tone. "I am Sutto." "Is that who you are, or what you are?" Jackby asked. "There is no difference. I am Sutto, and I want my gem back." "It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to..." "Shh!" Spenlish snapped, putting her hand over her mouth. He continued looking at the creature. "I don't trust you to just let you go, so you will have to come with us. Garthiak, keep watch over him." But as the warrior moved in closer, the Sutto shot off up into the air with a laugh. "How will you catch me?" Jackby nodded at Spenlish, and she flew after without question. "You miserable gort!" But it now appeared that the creature was even more swift and agile in flight than she. Soon Spenlish began to tire. Jackby had to think fast. Then he shouted, "Spenlish, don't chase him any more. I have the gem and he's not getting it." Spenlish stopped flying and settled in another alcove. Sutto began to fly round and round, making taunting noising and flapping his arms. Jackby turned away and began to walk down another corridor. "Follow me, both of you. He's already lost, as I have his prize." He put his hand back in his pocket. He was sure the jewel was still there. Sutto began to whiz round and round in faster, dizzying circles, a clear demonstration of frustration. Spenlish and Garthiak had already joined him in the corridor as Jackby walked on. Another door was before them, and this time number 27 and 2 square holes were in there. Lost my place completely. This could be any combination, so long as they add up to 27 in total. He began to make the calculations when Sutto glided in, shouting random numbers at the top of his voice to distract. "Spenlish!" Jackby shouted in anger. "Give Garthiak a bow and arrows." She gestured, and the warrior now stood with a bow and quiver. "Now this Sutto is in the narrow corridor with us. He can't move around so easily, so put an arrow to your bow and shoot the creature if it makes any more noise." Garthiak smiled broadly, took aim, and the creature fell silent, flapping his arms in a nervous fashion. A few minutes later, Jackby found a combination. "Blue pentagon, that's 25, and red leaf, that's 2. So these should do it." Sure enough, the door disappeared, and another grey mist was before them. The new place appeared very similar to the last, though it was not quite the same. Garthia walked behind the Sutto creature, and with arrow primed, yet keeping watch all round. Ooh. Very good. And if the listeners would like to read that themselves without me stumbling over and losing my place, where could they get a copy of 3 short stories for kids aged 11 to whatever?
That's Amazon. That is available on Amazon, both in paperback and Kindle. All my books are paperback and Kindle on Amazon now. So yeah, I think my pseudonym's a bit of a mouthful for people, but they'll get it one day. They will. Yeah. If I were a rapper, they'd get it a lot quicker. So this is called 3 Short Stories for Kids Aged 11 to Whatever, and it's by Hybropsyche, Hybropsyche. But I think if you just put by Hybro, that should bring it up as well.
Yes.
So and you can go into any bookshop in the world and order them literally. But I'm still plugging to bookshops again.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming in. That was a brilliant interview, very enlightening and very fun. I had